everybody, you should know Brother Jerry Cooper, one of our elders, Jimmy O'Brien, her dad. And then this is Chris Johnson. Would you like to tell him anything about yourself?
I taught Cody.
He taught
a little bit better or not. But I worship with currently with the Fulton congregation. Live in Fulton. Grew up at Salsa Creek. If you go on the waterway, you'll run right into her.
He is a teacher at Etowamba for A&B. And
I teach AP literature and
all those classes I wasn't smart enough to take. How long have y'all been married?
20 years.
No, almost 18 years.
Okay.
51 years.
I think he wins. How long did you date your wife before you got married?
4 years. Through college.
About 2.5 years. A little over 2.5 years.
About 5 years. Okay. Describe a good first date for a Christian. I'm going to start right here.
All right. Well, it's been a long time since I've had a first date. I asked my wife about this, and then I thought about when I was your age and I was in this class, and we had someone talk to us. Something that he said that has always impressed me that I've always tried to share in my teen class that I teach. If you can't start off, whatever the date is, if you could not start it off with a prayer, then that might not be the person that you're really looking that you need to date. Now, when I was in your situation and that guy said this, and he was an unmarried preacher, and I was like, ha! That's exactly right. That's why you're unmarried. That's the weirdest first date ever. And I'll be honest with you, the very first date that I went on with the woman who would become my wife, we did not do that, but it would have been possible. Does that make sense? Okay. It would have been possible. We did not grow up in the same church. She actually grew up Baptist. And so we were going to have a lot of things that we were going to have to work through. But I would say that a good first date needs to be one where you both feel comfortable. And it's where you can both actually talk. Going to a movie is probably, and that's the easiest one, but doing an activity where you can do something and actually talk, I think would probably be the first thing. And maybe with other people. That would be what I would suggest. Having some cushion, if you will, to have someone else to bounce off of in case things aren't going well.
That first statement is actually one of the reasons I asked you to do this class, because I still remember hearing that in your class.
Yeah.
Russ Crosswhite?
Russ Crosswhite.
You'll have him next week.
Yeah. He did eventually get married.
He did.
Yeah.
Well, Kristen and I talked about that question, a good first date for a Christian. I think, of course, this wasn't really our situation. We were a little older when we met in college, but I think especially for younger people, that a good first date for a Christian would be some type of like you said, some kind of group activity, maybe especially, or maybe even coming to church, or a church function, maybe a function with the youth group or something. I think that's, if you happen to be dating someone that does not attend here at this congregation, I think that's a great way to kind of set the tone of what your expectations are, what's important to you, what your priorities are. And, right from the get-go, kind of start off on the right foot. Chris? You concur?
All right. But the first thing that really come to my mind was to go out and eat and then go to the movie. But on second thought, it would be like Jim said, go to a church function, where you got a bunch there. And And we did start out, when we first started going out, we used it as a double date, you know, that, we went on with somebody that I know and their friends, somebody she knew, that, you know, and sometimes even kinfolks, which might not always want to go, but anyway, that's a good thing, and like Jim said, also bring them to church. When we first started going out, Jeanette went to another denomination, I guess you'd say, but then she soon started going with me to our church, and later was baptized into our church, into the church class. But any time that you can go out with somebody, and you know, especially if you don't know them well to start with, get to know them, and you know, the more you're around them, and the more different things you do, the more you will learn about them. Because things, even though they might not say, and you might not say, they'll come out, you know, after you had contact with them, you know, good bit of time.
How old do you think a person should be before they start dating? Anybody jump in?
Well, if I had a daughter, it'd be 25.
But you had sons.
I had sons, and I would say probably 15 or 16, even though I know that these days a lot younger than that nowadays. And did back then, you know, some did. But, you know, you need to learn a few things before you get in trouble trying to figure them out and get you saved. That's all. That's what it is.
I don't know if maybe there's a, you know, an across the board age that I would say, certainly probably 16 maybe, but I think it could also depend on the child, or on the person you're talking about. You know, certain kids, the parents may feel more comfortable with, you know, maybe them dating a little earlier, and I think it would also depend on who they were going out with. Also, I think there are a lot of other things to take into account, and kind of be an individual decision for that specific teenager that
How mature
that's
they are.
really, right, yeah.
Some are mature a lot earlier.
Yeah, so I'm not going out on a ledge and saying an exact age.
I would agree that it depends upon the maturity of the individual, and I think that maturity needs to be defined by the capacity for which a person understands who he or she is and their relationship with God at that particular moment. This is going to be a point that I'm planning on actually making in the next question, if we can just go ahead and move into it. Master Opinion.
The Bible doesn't really talk about dating. So what do you think the biblical purpose of dating should be in our eyes? Yeah, you talk.
All right. I firmly believe that a person needs to be comfortable with their relationship with God, first and foremost. That's the most important thing you're ever going to do. And once you have reached where you feel like you are and God are in communication, you're praying, you're talking to God, you're listening to God through reading His Word, then at that point you're comfortable enough with yourself that you can start exploring that relationships that are going to help expand your relationship with God. And in dating, what I would tell my daughter, if she were here, or my other, I have two really small kids, but my older daughter, is that as you start to think about dating, and it's like these gentlemen talked about the maturity, is this relationship, is this experience going to help pull you towards God more, or is it going to be something that actually pulls you away from God more? The golden rule to love God, first and foremost, is always the most important thing. The most important thing as far as dating goes, too. So I would think, what is God's perspective on dating? That's the question, still, right? That answer would be to find someone who will live with you in heaven or with God one day and help get you there. instead of pulling you away from that potential home with God.
Yep. I totally agree with that. There's not a lot in the Bible, or really nothing in the Bible about dating, because really dating didn't exist. Dating as we know it today didn't exist then. So, but based on the principles that are in the Bible, we can deduce that probably the most important thing is to find someone that is going to help you get to heaven. And I was reading a book that really, that's kind of was his line too. Brad Hare of the Letters to My Children. That's on my handout. I think I listed it as a source. But that's what he says. He says, first and foremost, I want my children to marry somebody who's going to help them get to heaven. I think that's what it boils down to. You want somebody that certainly is not going to be a stumbling block, somebody that's going to pull you away. You want somebody that is going to help you in everything that you do, and ultimately help you get to heaven, and you'll help them get to heaven, and like you said, hopefully live in heaven together.
I think y'all covered it pretty good. I do agree with all of you. Talk a lot more than I have. But basically, I'd say that as a Christian and starting dating, is to be sure to remember what you've been taught as a Christian, and not let nobody influence you. And for the one you're going to date, you want to find someone that either believes what you do, what the Bible says, or someone that will be willing to believe what you do and try to live a Christian life like you're trying to live. And like I said, there's not a lot about dating in there, but back then, a lot of times, they just told the daughters, "You're going to marry him," and I don't think that would go over too well nowadays to the daughters or the sons. But that's basically it. I agree with all they said about it.
I want to jump in. I had one thought. The aspects of marriage and how you're supposed to act within your marriage, which I'm sure Cody's going to get to that in this class at some point, how a man and a wife live together and treat each other. And if they're not treating you, as you're dating, if that aspect isn't coming up, if they're not treating you with a certain amount of respect or anything that's also helping you and grow into your Christian character, I think also that would be something that God's perspective would be on dating, is not only getting closer to Him, but helping you to develop that Christian character that you're going to need to develop to handle all of life's storms. They're going to come your way. That just often.
Should we only date to marry?
Well, that's a tough question, and I guess the more that I've studied in this area, and Kristen and I have talked about this, that the more that we've studied, that the more I'm not going to say date, that you should only date to marry, but certainly I think that especially the younger that you are, the serious, really serious relationships that we see some people develop, especially at younger ages, I'm not so sure that may be the best thing. Certainly, my opinion, I guess, on this has evolved a little. I used to think that dating is fine as long as you were dating somebody that was, a good guy or girl or something. But now I just, and it depends on what you're considering dating. If you're dating somebody looking for a serious relationship, but at the same time it's somebody that you know that you're never going to marry, then is that the best thing? Is that the best idea to really get involved deeply with somebody that you really don't think you're ever going to marry? So I would say date seriously to marry, but there are certainly situations, when I think it's good for people to date and to have really good close friends of the opposite sex and date is, when you say date, do things together, but maybe not evolve those relationships into serious, really serious relationships, especially at younger ages.
I don't think that should be the only reason. Because really, the dating is if you decide who you do want to marry. But there's really one thing you need to remember, that certain things, if you stay a long time and you get close, there's certain things is you're supposed to save for marriage. And dating, like you said, like Jim said, that the dating, you can have a close friend of the other sex, and you can do things that not necessarily be considered dating if you're going out to eat with either of either sex. You can be close to somebody and not let it be dating. That's saying, but like I say, if you deserve it just as one you're going to marry, that would be getting back to the one where somebody just told you who you're supposed to marry, in a sense.
I'm a literature teacher. Okay, so I teach stories, myth, folklore, all that sort of stuff. So I share anecdotes. I want to tell you about a time I was dating this girl. That's an author. She liked to sing to me on the phone. I did not like that. I'm not a musical person. I'm the only Johnson in Itawamba County who can't play an instrument or sing. It's true. I'm the only one. I am the anomaly. She sang to me on the phone. I did not like that. I found out very quickly. I don't like people who sing to me on the phone. I dated another girl. She asked me out on the second date. I did not like that necessarily. I found out that was two characteristics that I did not like. And so, I guess my anecdotes were shared to say, do you date to marry? That's just a complicated question. It's kind of open-ended that you just can't say yes or no to. What you have to do is realize, what is the purpose of dating? The purpose of dating is to find that person that you click with. And we've already reiterated that is to help get you closer to God. Now, of those two people, one was in my youth group, one wasn't. So, that was not really, both of them went to a church, but that was the point of going out on a few dates, is to find out, what do you like about a person? And you really don't know until you start hanging out with somebody. And that's why I think it's pure, the question that we asked earlier about the age is important. To make sure that you're emotionally ready to go, I don't like that. I do like this. I do like that. There are certain things that you're going to find as you start dating. Characteristics, tics. Everybody's got them. Which ones are deal breakers? Which ones are not deal breakers? And so you date to find out those things. What do you like and not like? And again, what's going to get you closer to heaven and what's going to be the deterrent?
Just real quick.
Do what?
I want to start calling you.
Go to the block. Very sad now.
Of course, when we say date, you know, I think there are two, you know, we can't date, as Christians, we can't date like the world dates. I don't think we can. When you look at the things now that, you know, that the people that are not Christians, you know, the reasons that they date, the reasons that they select the people they want to date, the things they do on dates are not things that Christians should be doing. So we have to make that distinction. That as Christians we have to date like Christians. We can't date like the world, because we know where that leads to.
Should you ever date someone with the intent on changing them, not just in the idea of converting them, bringing them to church with you, but in the idea of this person seems to be on the phone, I want to change that. So,
I want to know where it's country music or what she's saying.
It was show tune.
Show tune.
I like Broadway stuff. I'm not a fan, you know.
But I don't think that actually should depend on that, you know, changing them. Even though there is some churches that they do change, but some of them are never going to change, and they may just change temporarily until they get married or get what they want or whatever, you know, and then they'll go right back to themselves when something goes wrong. So I don't think we should depend on changing somebody, but you know, you can see if you date them long enough, you can probably figure out if they any chance of them changing, you know, or get a better idea.
More than likely, if that guy drinks before you get married, he's more than likely going to drink after you get married.
That's right. Okay.
And if he's abusive to you before you get married, you might as well look out. He's probably going to be that way after you get married. So you need to watch, you know, those are red flags. Watch for them.
absolutely. All right.
That's, you know, things to, you know, it depends on what kind of change you're talking about, whether if it's someone that's not a member of the church, or if it's things that you don't like, that you want to try to change. As far as that goes, you know, like you were just saying, that you know, there are behaviors that can be displayed by either person that you know, if it's a little quirk or a little something that's not that big of a deal, you know, and you think, I mean, there are certainly things that Kristen does not like that I do, and that she has told me, and you know, whether that's, you know, hanging clothes up or something like that, and I maybe didn't want to do that, but then I thought, well, that's important to her, so I'll try to do that. So that's not really what we're talking about, but more serious things like, you know, if it's someone that you can't trust, if you've been dating for a while and you figure out that they can't be trusted. Trust is very important in a relationship, and if you can't trust them, then that's going to be a big thing. If they've been untrustworthy, you know, pretty consistently, you know, they're probably going to continue to be that way.
I'll pick up on the trust aspect. There are deal breakers. Girl singing to me on the phone. Well, that was a deal breaker.
Just a random question. How long did it last after she started singing?
He was cute, didn't he? It's about 3 months.
Did you tell her that was the reason?
No, she actually, no. It was fine. Like a month later, she started dating a drummer, so everything was good. I was going to be a boring accountant at school, so that wasn't a really big. Beside the point. Yeah, I have an accounting degree. I teach English. It's weird. Don't worry about it. It works. It does. Well, please. I want to talk to you about the trust aspect. I'm going to share an anecdote again. My wife is the daughter of a Baptist deacon who's like the head of the Gideons in Mississippi. I'm like strong, hardcore. I am the grandson of a Baptist preacher. My mother was Baptist. So I have seen, both through my father and my mother, and then the lady I picked to be my wife, situations. And I remember when I started dating my wife, Anna, and we'd been dating a couple of years, and she was singing a solo in a choir that Sunday morning and said, I'd love for you to come. I want you to come to church with me. And I said, well, I can't tomorrow morning. I've got to go to my church. And that was when we realized we've hit this point. And it was at that point we started having conversations, that started open dialogue. And so the original question, do you date that you can change somebody? In my specific situation, as far as the spiritual aspect goes, you enter into it with the Bible in the center of the table, and you open up and you read it together. And that's what we did. That took 6 months. And she called me up one Sunday morning and said, I want to come to your church and I want you to baptize me, after we've been studying for a long while. She left her mom and dad, got in a car from Dorsey and drove over there. And at that point I knew, well, this is my girl. This is the one I definitely want to marry. And we actually got engaged 3 months later after that. And she went off to medical school and we got married while she was there. So we had a lot of traveling and whatnot as different aspects of our lives. But I would say when it comes to changing, as these two gentlemen said, there are some things that are deal breakers: character flaws, tics, moral issues, abusive, alcohol, self-inflicting wounds upon you and them. But when it comes to spiritual stuff, you have to be able to sell it to the Bible, and don't think that once you get married that's the time to do it. I would say if you can't figure it out, if you can't hash it out, you need to be honest and agree with that person, just and separate both ways. Because there's nothing more difficult, I think, than a man and a wife who go to two different churches, and then their kids have to decide where they're going. I've seen that a lot. One of my wife's best friends is that situation, and who gets the kids? How do you even? I don't know. Anyway, does that make sense?
Yeah, we had one family here that the mother and the kids come here, and the daddy went to the Methodist church, and it actually went better than you think it would. But I always told him, for a Methodist, he raised some good Church of Christ kids.
What qualities should we or these kids be looking for when they start looking for someone to date to marry?
Well, in one statement, you could really pretty well cover that, is a good Christian young lady. That's what you look for. And if she is a good Christian young lady, she's going to have all the qualities that she should have. But you got to be sure that's what she is, and not talking against the females, but they can put up a front too,
They're true.
There's a little ask for that. Are you supposed to talk?
Well, I said some of it all goes, be sure not to pick somebody that you know drinks or is abusive or controlling that won't let you be with your friends. He just wants you with him all the time. That's not going to work. You know, you should be able to be with your friends like he is with his friends. So make sure that he's not controlling, because that could get you in a lot of trouble.
I think, qualities, hopefully we're looking at Christian candidates here that you're choosing from to date. That doesn't always mean, just, if they're Christian, that everything, that you're, like you said, that you're going to click. So you need to make sure, and some of this you won't be able to see until you spend a little time together, but, do you get along well together? I think it still all comes back to, is it somebody that is going to help you get to heaven? Does that person make you a better Christian? Are you a better Christian, both of you together, than you would be? If you find that, then I think that's probably a pretty good place to start. Chris?
Well, I agree with all of that. I don't know if you want like a list. Like I made a list of stuff, but
Go for it.
I just wrote down things like you have to love God and put God first, honesty, respects parents, has patience, trustworthy, works hard, good manners, optimist, level-headed, helpful, selfless, forgiving, a good reputation. I think someone.
Well, that's all. That's good for them to hear too. So, a couple of things. I would say, if you can read 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 5 through 15, and find someone who will help you do that. That's adding to your faith, goodness, goodness, knowledge, and all that stuff. I'm sure you're familiar with those verses. And I'm going to tell you something my dad told me once. All right? My dad was really colorful. He was military. Okay? And so he told me, when you start dating, look at the young lady's parents. How does the man treat the wife? And vice versa. How do the kids treat the parents? Because when it gets time, and you're at a little stage or little on in life, that's what they're going to do. They're going to treat you like they saw either the mom or dad, the appropriate parent, treat the other parent. And they're, if, like I would tell my daughter, if she saw the young man she was talking to and he's disrespectful to his mother, one day he will be disrespectful to you. That's just nearly a given. So look at how he talks about his mom. How does he talk about his mom? How does he talk about his dad? If he reveres his dad, look at his dad. Not necessarily what he looks like. He may have a little gut, may have a little receding hairline, and may not be, Mr. GQ anymore. That stuff fades. What's going to matter in the long term is how he treats you, how he loves you. Is the dad at church on Sunday morning, and you want him there on Sunday night and Wednesday night too? If the young man's dad isn't. I'm not saying that's necessarily a deal breaker, and it can't differ. But statistics show us it's more likely that would be the case. In addition to everything else.
Just one thing to add to that, as far as, I think it's a good idea when dating to involve both families as much as possible. Spend time with his or her family and get to know them, because you can see a lot of things, based on how they interact with their family, or and vice versa. So, that's an important part of it too. That can give a lot of clues as to, like you said, I've always heard that the way a young man treats their mother You know, that women can look at that and see if he's disrespectful to his mother, then there's a good chance that he would be disrespectful to you at some point. So I think that's something too that's important.